The ghost of Eddie Helicium, Dutch intellectual who worked at the Judenrat in Amsterdam and at Camp Westerbork. She died in Auschwitz on November 30th, 1943, and is played by Laura Levin. The ghost of Edith Stein, also known as Saint Theresia Benedicta of the Cross, a German Jewish philosopher who converted to Catholicism in 1922 and lived out her life as a Carmelite nun. She died in Auschwitz on August 9, 1942, and was canonized by Pope John Paul II in 1998. She is played by Barbara Ensminger. The ghost of Irene Nemyrovsky, a white Russian from Kiev, who did not view herself as a Jew because she was baptized. She was a famous author during her lifetime, and she wrote Suite Française and other novels. She could not produce 3 Aryan grandparents and died at the age of 39 in Auschwitz on August 17, 1942. She is played by Joanne Wood. The living Judith Isaacson, who later went on to become a professor at Colby College in Maine and is the author of Seed of Sarah. She is played by Andrea Gable Richards. The living Nahama Tek, who escaped the concentration camps headed by righteous Christians, also known as righteous Gentiles, while living in Poland. She went on to teach sociology in the United States and wrote several books including Dry Tears, When Light Pierced the Darkness, and Resilience and Courage. She is played by Lolly Lovett. The living Hannah Arendt, one of the greatest political philosophers of the 20th century, of German Jewish descent, who immigrated to the United States and went on to write Eichmann in Jerusalem, Men in Dark Times, The Human Condition, and On Totalitarianism. She died in 1976 and is buried at Bard College. She is played by Monica Cease. The ghost of Bubby the dog, spokesdog for the Chorus of the Lost Pets of the Holocaust, who was a dog owned by a German soldier in the Irene Nemyrovsky novel Suite Française. He was an Alsatian breed. He is played by Stephen Kierstead. The female SS chorus, consisting of Ilse Koch, aka the Bitch of Buchenwald, and Hermine Brausteiner, a Nazi war criminal who married a United States citizen, Russell Ryan, and was living in Queens, New York, only to be extradited to Germany, where she was sentenced to life in prison. Hermine died while imprisoned. The chorus is played by Nancy Corwin. The Mengele twins chorus, who died from painful experiments and simultaneous autopsies performed by Dr. Joseph Mengele. The Dead Infant Chorus, consisting of the many infants and newborns that met their deaths upon their arrival at the concentration camps. They are played by Fred and Ann Stocking. Welcome to Lovely Flowers at the Train Station. My name is Wing Guglielmo. I first moved here in 2014 and found this wonderful group, all volunteers. It's an honor to have the opportunity to present my play, Lovely Flowers at the Train Station, and I want to thank Lemoyne Community Arts for this honor. I knew when I moved here that this was a wonderful community to be involved with. This play is a culmination of 3 years' worth of research for my thesis into the Holocaust as it affected women and animals. If feminism provides a voice for the voiceless, then I hope that the audience hears the voices of not only the women who perished, or all who perished, but the hows of the millions of pets who were left to wander the landscape of Eastern Europe, hopelessly searching for their humans. I have 2 requests of the audience. Be open to the idea that ghosts can exist, and believe with all your heart that a dog can talk. The setting. It is almost nightfall on Purim, March 26, on an Israeli kibbutz. The year is 1967. The scene takes place during the spring before the Summer of Love in the U.S. and before the Six-Day War fought between June 5th and June 10th, 1967. Great celebration can be overheard from neighboring villages and from the kibbutz. Recitations from the Book of Esther can be overheard. Judith Isaacson, Hannah Arendt, and the Hamatek have planned to celebrate Purim together. They meet in Nahama's kitchen. Judith is 42 years old, Nahama is 35 years old, and Hannah is 61 years old.
Wonderful having warm weather in March. Back home in Maine, this time of year can be so brutal.
I know what you mean. I can still remember the winters.
Oh, what did Hannah say she was coming?
She should be here any minute. She was picking up some vegetables on her way here.
Well, I'll go ahead and get the coffee started.
So, how are things going for you at school?
Things are going quite well. I should be finished with my graduate degree in a couple of years, probably sometime at 69.
That's wonderful. I'll be studying at Columbia. My parents always stressed the importance of education. No sooner than we were liberated after the war, my parents hired tutors for my sister and me.
And I know what you mean. Education is important.
Did you ever think of living here in Israel after liberation?
Honestly, I didn't. My husband was from Maine, and after the war, I wanted to get away from everything. Anything that reminded me of Europe. Hitler, the Nazis. Maine seemed like a far enough place to start over. Why did you leave Poland?
Poland was unsafe for Jews after the war, so my father moved us to Israel. Shalom on this festival of Purim. Ah,
Shalom.
Hannah, I was just asking Judith why she didn't come to Israel after the war. Instead, she chose to move to Maine in the U.S.
I can understand that. With the help of an American diplomat, I escaped to New York in 1941. I became involved in the German Jewish community, and I stayed.
I heard that many Jews didn't like your book, Eichmann in Jerusalem, your assessment on the banality of evil. Are you still being criticized?
Oh, most certainly. I don't think that many people got my point.
Which was?
I asked the question, is evil radical or simply a function of thoughtlessness? Do ordinary people tend to just obey orders and follow the crowd without really thinking about their actions, or in some cases, their inaction?
I agree with you.
So do I, but then again, I did not witness the horror of the camps that some of your critics did, Hannah.
Well, I did, and I can see how members of the Jewish community were put off by your articles in the New Yorker, and also that Eichmann book. I survived by sticking closely to my mother and Aunt Monica. We made the right choices. For a long time, I didn't talk about it because I wanted to live. I wanted to live, and you can't live with such a past.
Radical evil always exists in a totalitarian environment. Just look at those Jewish prisoners in the camps that helped the Nazis, the Jewish kapos. For a little more food, a pillow, and some bed covers, they were willing to send their own people to the showers.
Enough, Hannah. You said enough. Whose side are you on anyway?
What kind of Jew are you?
An assimilated one.
Oh, I'm glad that you both came. Tonight we celebrate Purim. I remember celebrating Purim with my mother and father before the Germans occupied Poland. Everyone was always so happy. I wish I could celebrate Purim again with them just one more time.
I like to think
smells so wonderful. I remember when rations were scarce in Amsterdam.
Who is speaking?
I am the spirit of Eddie Hellison.
Eddie? Who are you?
I was part of the Judenrat, the Jewish council in Amsterdam, preparing families and individuals arriving at Westerbork camp in the northeastern Netherlands before their journeys eastward.
Journey eastward. Some journey that was.
So, you were like the Papos?
No, I was not. I merely tried to help people. My involvement was administrative in nature.
Sounds like the same thing to me.
I wanted to do what I could to help. I was more of a social worker, a person to lessen their fears. In the end, I traveled in one of those cattle cars, as did so many other millions, but it was my choice. I was thinking I could do some good. I didn't even make it to 30.
But you sent your own people east.
I will never get over that, my part in the journey.
This is not what I meant by the banality of evil or thoughtlessness.
I can't judge you, Eddie. Our family was hidden by righteous Gentiles. We never suffered as you did.
And you, Hannah, you fled Germany in the early 1940s, right?
I did. I left in 1941 after seeing the writing on the wall.
Not all Germans were bad. Life to me still was and is beautiful.
Are you kidding me, Eddie? Beautiful? How can you think this? Didn't you yourself die at one of these camps?
I died on November 30th, 1943 in Auschwitz.
Ay, how horrible.
Oh, but it wasn't really all that bad. I was very lucky for so long. I couldn't bear my mother and my father and my brother dying alone.
You were a martyr and a saint, Eddie. I remember meeting you at Westerbork. So happy, so vivacious, and so comforting. You made it easier for us to get into those cattle cars that transport to our ultimate death.
Who is this one that has come?
I am the spirit of Edith Stein.
And I remember you, Edith. You arrived with the priests and the nuns, Jewish Catholics, or the Catholic Jews. You were all wearing yellow scarves in their habits and frocks.
Yes, that was me.
Oh, I also remember a young priest who hadn't left his monastery for 15 years. I believe was December 1942. I can remember his eyes, his beautiful eyes, and how peaceful he wandered the barracks.
Oh, and all the mud and dust at Westerbork.
It was the Jews in the desert once again.
What is that?
Some lost spirits have come.
Our eyes hurt us and we are blinded.
But they injected our brown eyes with chemicals to turn them blue. The Nazis were beasts.
The twins that Joseph Mengele experimented on.
How awful!
I remember seeing the twins. I had no idea what was happening to them. I was young, naive even. I didn't even realize what the tall smokestacks that pointed to the sky were for.
Mengele was simply following the orders of the right.
Nonsense, Hannah.
Nonsense, Hannah! He was a monster!
Yes. I agree, Nakama. Although he always passed over my mother, Aunt Nanda, and me during this election process.
Simply following the orders of the Fuhrer to discover ways of purifying the Aryan race.
He probably thought he was doing the right thing.
How can you both say that, defending that beast like that?
I'm not defending him.
I only met him once, when he directed me to the left of the selection line. He looked very dapper in his well-polished boots.
Why? Because I was a Jew.
But you were still a Jew, born a Jew with Jewish ancestors. It was the Nuremberg laws.
I am not and was not a Jew at the time of my death.
I too was baptized, and so was my husband, and we both died in the camps. I will not believe it. I was not a Jew, and I am not a Jew.
Now, who is this who has just entered the room?
I'm the spirit of Irene Nemirovsky.
But as per the Rite's definition, you are an ancestral Jew.
Nonsense. My husband and my children were baptized. I was baptized. The Jews haunt me to this day.
Who is here?
Ilse Koch, Hermione Brown-Steiner. We remember you, Eddie, and you too, Edith. And Irene, who cried right up to the very end. I am not a Jew. If one cannot produce three Aryan grandparents, then what is a Jew? A Jew is a Jew. Once a Jew, always a Jew.
How did you get in here? Go away! Go away! You're not wanted here!
Yes.
Go away with your whips and lampshades!
Go away, go away.
Where is he? Bruno, my master, where is he?
Who is that?
I am Buffy the dog.
Why are you here?
I speak for the entire lost group of the lost pets of the war. I was shot by a Frenchman for no other reason than spite. We too suffered like the humans. We were lost without our human masters during the war.
Bubby? The Bubby that I wrote about in Sweet Française?
Yes.
Is it really you?
Yes, it is me. But the people in that French town were horrible. The German soldiers treated us better.
I can't believe what I'm hearing. A talking dog? A spokes dog for the lost pets of the show.
That is because you speak too much from your head, Hannah, and not enough from your heart.
I want to hear what Bubby has to say.
Thank you. No one in the world has heard our side of the journey. It is a sad, sad one.
I'm going outside for a while. It's becoming too crowded in here.
For a long time, we searched for our humans. We starved. Some of us ate one another. There was a dog, Fritzy was his name, living in Poland, near a train station. He would go there to pick through the bones buried out back. He said it wasn't a train station, actually, just something that looked like a train station, with lovely flowers planted out front. He would stop to breathe in the smells of all of the flowers at this train station.
The train stations were like madhouses.
It wasn't a train station, Buddy. It was a camp called Treblinka. It was made to look like a train station.
That's right. Treblinka was in Poland. I know of it.
Well, whatever it was, Fritzy told me that he'd never seen such lovely flowers at a train station.
No doubt that those flowers were fertilized from the ashes of Jews.
They used our cremated ashes as fertilizer. If one of us died from an injection, Mengele would immediately kill the other twin. He called it a simultaneous autopsy.
How dreadful the camp was. Within 1 hour of arriving at Auschwitz, we stopped being human beings.
We missed the torture.
The babies!
As soon as we were born, we were thrown against a wall or stomped by a well-polished black boot.
You were lucky to have died when you did.
It would have been nice to know our mothers, if even for a short time.
Oh, but they loved you very much. Many of us never got over the fact that we allowed our cold and our sick to go first.
But you did what you had to, Eddie. Maybe Hannah was right. Who am I to judge never having experienced camp life?
We all had to think about how one was equipped for one's extinction. Through all of this, I still think life is beautiful.
You must have lived in a fantasy, Eddie. Life was and is not beautiful.
non-Jewish communities.
Life in the camp was horrible for a twin.
We lived so close to death that we didn't fear it anymore.
It was horrible for everyone.
I agree.
There was a feeling of constant fear when hiding in the Polish homes.
Take it from all of us, it was horrible, especially if you were alone. We made it by sticking together, staying close, and making the right decisions at the right time.
If we allowed our hatred to turn us into savage beasts like them, then there was no hope for anyone.
None of us were savage beasts, except those SS women.
What did I miss?
Lovely flowers at a train station.
What?
Bubby was telling us of the lovely flowers at Treblinka, planted out in front to make it appear like a train station.
Oh, no, not that dog again.
Don't pick on him, Hannah. He's just one dog.
I'm not alone here. There's many dogs here with me. Millions of us died as a result of the thoughtlessness of humans, and they're all here with me. I was asked to speak on their behalf.
Did you know that when the Poles hid Jews in their homes, it was known as keeping cats?
There are cats here too.
Each night, while praying and saying the rosary, I never once thought of the abandoned pets. I'm glad that you have spoken, Bobby. I believe very strongly that dogs, that pets have souls, a spirit like humans.
Actually, Bubby, you have a point. Humans only think of themselves. There is rarely any self-reflection.
How can you make such broadly sweeping statements like that, Hannah? The people of an entire country cannot be thought of as just an angry mob. There are always some people who make life worth living.
Then how are they to be thought of, the non-Nazis, all of the townspeople who denounce Jews on a daily basis?
Banality.
Of evil, I know. But does it make it right?
Are those SS women still here? I feel like I'm back in the Jewish ghetto with the guards watching us.
The Jewish ghettos were nothing but the result of Germany's imperialistic nature. It's the result of supranationalizing, nothing more. People affected by the Holocaust were made unnecessary by the Nazis.
What do you mean?
It's more of an anti-politics, really. A total terror that the Nazis created to pull everyone into their drama, their scene. That's how it was possible to turn the ordinary neighbor into a Jew denouncer. It's what the German philosopher Immanuel Kant calls radical evil.
I agree, Hannah. This cemented it for the Poles, who already were culturally anti-Semitic. They quickly turned into an angry hunting mob to turn their Jewish neighbors and strangers into the Gestapo. But not all fell into this trap. Many Polish people risked their own lives, not to mention the lives of their family, to hide Jews. I know. I was one of the many who escaped the camps because of these righteous Gentiles. I wouldn't be alive today without the Polish families who hid me.
You were lucky.
I know. The Nazi concept of collective responsibility was frightening, really. The actions of one could mean the doom of an entire family.
But I still believe that there was much light during these dark times. There were many people who broke through all of the hate and injustice to shine.
There was, Eddie, and I hoped for it. You know, in 1943, I was living in the United States. I couldn't believe what was happening in Europe. I didn't want to believe it. No one wanted to believe it. It's as if Hitler's regime was an onion.
An onion?
An onion has many layers that, when peeled away, reveal an empty center where a leader would normally be found. The outside layers protect the movement's membership, a protective wall which separated them from the outside world of normalcy.
How does this explain Hitler and his evil movement?
With the changes in the hierarchy, the leader in this group can be hidden. Each new layer of the onion can hide a more sinister, radical layer. The leader of an onion movement sits in the center, surrounded by his inner circle, forming these layers which spread around him in an aura of mystery and suspense.
So, the different layers of the system are fake? Like one group in the regime may appear to be normal and other groups extreme. This system seems to make the onion's actions almost shock-proof.
Absolutely. Because he was at the center, Hitler was able to act as if he was above the movement. He was a buffer, if you will. The Nazis' multiple divisions were like the layers of the onion and acted as a front for the next, more militant group of followers.
Hitler made the Jews a scapegoat, a false internal enemy of the German and European people. And in onion society, what else could be done with a pseudo-internal enemy but to eradicate it?
And this is what they did to the Jews. Made them an internal enemy of Germany and the whole of Europe.
Well, yes, but not everyone ate the onion. The darkness in humanity made way for the light.
But I didn't see the light. The lost pets of the did not see the light. Where's my light?
I am so sorry, Bubby, that you saw the dark ways of humanity.
I never had pets, but now that you mention it,
A society can be viewed by how it treats its voiceless. Animals are voiceless and depend on humans for their lives.
But their souls live on just as mankind.
In loving our humans, becoming so much a part of their world, we lost our instinct for survival. Now we are nothing but domesticated dummies, awaiting our next meal.
I understand what you're saying, Bubby, but not all humans are this way.
Most are, but some are not. A German loved and mourned over you, buddy, not the French Jews. But all of this does not matter in times of war. I was not a Jew, but I still went to the camps to die in the crematoria.
And I was sent to the camps even though I was a Carmelite nun.
But I think you're both missing the point.
Yes, the final solution was not about logic. It was about extermination, the annihilation of entire groups of people.
So what brought all of us here today?
Actually, we were just saying how wonderful it would be to speak to our lost loved ones just one more time.
And have you?
No.
But these discussions are very important.
But why? We can't change what's already happened, especially for those of us who have died because of it.
It is what I call plurality. It's what comes out of action and discussion. Actions reveal who a person is and how we related to one another.
What you say is so interesting. I wish I read your work.
Your mind is fascinating, Hannah.
I don't understand all of it. I just wish I could talk with my husband again.
But you can't, Irene. One spirit cannot call out to another spirit.
That's not fair. SS women are here, you're here, but my husband isn't. I wish you didn't exist, buddy. I wish I never wrote about you in Sweet Française.
Please stop this bickering, you two. Hannah is right. Even though we don't have a choice as to who we can talk with, this discussion is enlightening.
It's bringing up a lot of memories I'd rather not think of now.
We must talk of these things, or all the lost lives will be for nothing.
She's right, Judith. In my interviews with survivors and rescuers, they all agreed that although these memories were painful, it helps to settle things in the mind.
I'm not sure that the past will ever be settled for the Jews.
I know it's not settled for me. I can never forget Auschwitz.
I feel that my life is settled. I loved my life. I had it far better than most in Amsterdam and at Westerbork camp.
Forgiveness is the necessary corrective for the inevitable dangers resulting from inaction.
What? Hannah, sometimes it's hard to understand what you're saying.
Forgiveness is the human faculty for undoing. It comes out of the predicament of irreversibility, for which one is unable to undo what one has done, though one did not and could not have known what he was doing.
What?
You can't be saying what I think you're saying.
I agree with Hannah. What the Nazis lacked was a sense of thinking.
Initially, not all involved in the party knew what their actions would lead to. And you're right, Edith. An internal dialogue was missing. It was all thoughtlessness. Nothing but thoughtlessness.
And without the ones who shined, there would be no European Jews left in the world.
Mengele was a beast,
You can't possibly say that he didn't know what he was doing.
or that he should be forgiven.
I'm not. He was pure, radical evil. But there were lights in the darkness, too.
I agree.
So do I. Even the Poles, who had such a historical and cultural embrace of anti-Semitism, helped to save the lives of many Jews.
It was because of the Poles' strong Catholic faith, their need to reassess their values.
I knew an anti-Semitic Catholic named Sophia Kosak-Zuka, who wrote the protest and started the Council for Aid to the Jews.
See? Lights among the darkness of anti-Semitism.
But where was my light?
Or mine. Where was my light? I didn't get a light.
I taught my children to be humane in this inhumane world.
I didn't see a light in the darkness.
You are a character in a novel.
This is true, but I thought you all understood. I have been asked to speak for all of the lost animals of the Holocaust.
I know of your suffering. I'm sad that you were not taken care of after the deportation.
Bobby, you were the pet of a decorated German soldier. But the lost pets of the war were the pets of Jewish vermin and exterminated just like their masters.
Stop! Stop! Make them stop! Go away, you Nazi swine!
Shut up! Go away and don't come back! You're not wanted here. We don't want to hear you. Nevertheless, we are here.
What I miss most is coffee and cigarettes.
I wish you could have some. It smells so good.
Maybe you should just hold a cup up to your nose.
I miss the sausages.
And keeping kosher went right out the window in the camps.
Meat was meat. You were lucky if you got it.
I know. The hoof didn't matter in the camps.
And the Wiener Schnitzel. I wish I had some now.
When we were visited in Poland by righteous Gentiles, my mother baked rolls that I sold in the black market. One customer said that they were so good they reminded him of Julie's cup. It was a scary moment.
Oh, it would go so
So
well with this
coffee
coffee
right now.
Oh, I would love some Easter babka right now.
You mean coffee, right?
No, I mean babka. Babka is for Christians, and challah is for Jews.
Oh,
Oh, that's
right.
right. You're not
a Jew.
Ladies, please.
You're right, Betty.
I still can't believe that you continue to deny your Jewishness, Irene.
Well, I can understand. I accepted Christianity. I know that as a Christian, I'm supposed to love my enemies, but I can't.
And the potato latkes and blintzes.
Dear sweet Bubby, you're making us all hungry.
Speaking of Christians and loving your enemies, have you ever heard of Father Coughlin from Boston?
I have. He was misguided.
Yes, and he was a fool.
Didn't he say, when we get through with the Jews in America, they'll think the treatment they received in Germany was nothing?
Not many know this, but he was very popular in America during the early 1940s, which is telling about the United States. Many fascist elements were at work in the States, while Jews were being annihilated. The FBI eventually shut him up.
There was also the culpability of England along with the United States for prolonging the Holocaust, which no one wants to own up to or admit.
But Coughlin wasn't the only one. People forget that Carnegie funded eugenics research in the early 1920s, which fueled the German scientific community working with the Nazi Party. The Nazi scientists thought the Americans were geniuses.
But not everyone believed these things.
No, thankfully that's true.
But it doesn't change the fact that after the Americans landed in Normandy in 1944, the killing centers were still going on. Stepped up even.
You're right.
Hungary turned over their Jews in 1944. I know because my family was deported during this roundup. If the world knew of the camps and the crematoriums, why didn't anyone do anything to stop it?
There was a lack of action, a lack of politics.
Then the entire world is culpable.
Aunt Magda and Mother never thought we'd make it.
We had the same worries.
I never thought I'd be shot by that stinking Frenchman.
I will never forget what a female commandant said to me. She said, "We'll shoot you Jewish bitches before the Americans come. It's the purest decree. No men, no sex, no seed of Sarah."
SS trash.
But you survived and married and had 2 children. See, you did pass on Sarah's seed.
I know, thank God. I remember a quote from Socrates.
Is it the one about injustice?
Yes.
It is better to suffer injustice than to
commit one.
I could not agree more. I have always loved that quote.
But what about the injustices committed against us? One can't go back to everyday life after something like this. Even that we cannot continue.
As Goethe wrote in Wanderers Nachricht, Wartner behalderunes du auch.
What?
Wait, soon
You too will rest.
I will never rest. It's because of the stupid Germans and the Jews that I died.
Hey, will you stop complaining? Millions upon millions died, and not all were Jews.
Many Gentiles risked their lives, were imprisoned or gassed at the camps for attempting to rescue and hide us.
There was no doubt that we suffered. We all did. This history, this past, there are tears for things, and there is laughter for some.
I laughed and smiled many times during the occupation.
I had a few laughs, too. One day, Aunt Magda and I plotted about shooting a female SS guard. And Aunt Magda said, "Let's gang up on the SS and grab their pistols." I replied, "We don't even know how to pull the trigger." At the munitions factory, Magda worked for the commandant. She would bring home scraps of food for Mother and me. She said, "I risked my life taking meat from the commandant's hound."
Ooh, that dog is here with me. He told me about her aunt. He said he never had a full meal while she was around.
I can't get the image out of my mind of the women sleeping in the barracks. The women slept on their side, head on each other's buttocks, feet on each other's calves. They looked like spoons nestled in a drawer.
By pressing men and women against each other, the Nazi total terror destroyed the space between them. By making death anonymous, the Nazis robbed death of its meaning as the end of a fulfilled life.
No funeral, no burial, just toss them into a heap or in a trench or on a crematoria table.
They took away the individual's own death so that nothing belonged to him and he belonged to no one. It seems to me that the insane mass manufacture of corpses is preceded by the preparation of living corpses, the musclemen of the camps.
I remember walking
streets of Amsterdam, when Jews still could, and I noticed this man, this Jew, was moving along, wrapped up in a cloud. Later on that day, while walking on the Beethovenstraat, I saw a Jewish man wearing a huge golden star on his chest. And all that yellow. I suddenly had a poetic vision of the sun rising above him. So radiant and so compelling did he look.
How beautiful you make that sound, Betsy.
At that moment, seeing that man, I was proud to be a Jew, and I was sorry that I came from an assimilated family.
I was always bothered by that term, assimilated. Why was it that the Jews had to assimilate and no other group did? Why did we have to sacrifice our tradition, culture, and religion to avoid extermination?
I don't know. Human society always creates a scapegoat.
I think the world turned into one great prison camp during the war. It's like we were all floating on a piece of wood, like crowding onto a small piece of wood adrift on an endless ocean after a shipwreck, and then saving oneself by pushing others into the water and watching them drown. I would much rather join those who preferred to float on their backs for a while, drifting on the ocean with my eyes turned upward toward heaven.
But Eddie, this is what you did, and you perished.
This is true, but in the camps, we were like chemicals, processed all day long and constantly compounded with other materials. We realized that we were one, made homogeneous by the mixture of many great backgrounds and makeups.
How poignantly put. Amalgamated humanity, yet enhanced.
Everyone views his own case as an unfortunate accident. Irene and Edith can understand this. But we as a people, as humanity, have not yet gained a common sense of history.
It's hard not to think that way, to not think of one's own survival.
I understand, but it didn't really matter whether I went or somebody else did. It was no longer a question of living for me, but of how one was equipped for one's extinction.
The far-reaching radical evil that existed during the war was staggering. It was a skillfully manufactured unreality.
Nothing can ever atone for the fact, of course, that one section of the Jewish population helped to transport the majority out of the country. History will pass judgment in due course. Many of us will never get over the fact that we allowed our old and sick to go first. I will never get over this.
But the Nazis set up the scenarios for this to happen. They made it easy for countries with ingrained anti-Semitism to denounce its Jews for their own survival, for more comfort and food.
This is what I meant by the layers of an onion, the rotting onion effect.
But that was the problem of our age. The hatred of Germans poisoned everyone's mind. If there was only one decent German, then he should be cherished despite that whole barbaric game. And because of that one decent German, it is wrong to pour hatred over an entire people.
But we are speaking of Nazism.
I blame the Germans and the Jews.
I could give you countless names of anti-Semitic Poles who helped rescue Jews, even at the expense of their families and their own lives. One Pole who hit me told me that she drank in hatred of Jews from her mother's milk.
But the Germans didn't kill me. It was that horrible Frenchman.
Nazi law treated the whole world as fallen under its jurisdiction. The fictitious quality of everyday life outside the camps made propaganda largely superfluous. It's the radical evil I spoke of earlier. This radical evil encapsulated and enveloped almost the entire European continent. Some moved towards the evil, and some moved towards the good.
It's human nature.
No nation is an undifferentiated mob. Of course there were some good Germans. Everything looked so clear-cut stars and concentration camps and terror, and war was of secondary importance.
The terror was the odor that came off of the onion.
The way it burns your eyes when you get too close.
I finally found inner peace regarding the impending destruction and annihilation. I could have no more illusions about it. They were out to destroy us completely, and I had to accept that and go on from there. I knew that we had to rid ourselves of all expectations of help from the outside world.
I could not accept death. I was just a child during the war.
I think I knew deep down in my heart that we would make it.
Even as the train that came to fetch its load with mathematical regularity, I thought that every atom of pain we add to this world makes it still more inhospitable.
You're so right, Eddie.
As I watched people in the cattle cars leaving, their hands through the gaps in the wooden slats, waving as if they were drowning, I thought to myself of something an inmate had told me. He said, Eddie, to be a chronicler of Westerbork, one would have to be a great poet.
You are that great poet, Eddie.
You are. Your words are filled with lovely images.
Indeed, Eddie, you are a great poet.
I'm not so sure about that. The Germans played a game with us, but we allowed them to do so, and that would be a great shame for generations to come. My hands are still stained with those I came in contact with.
My father was right when he told us that this war will be different. Even one of our bakery employees, Ulrich, said, "You Jews will soon leave and you won't come back." It was very difficult to distinguish between the culprits and the innocents, the enemies and the friends.
The images will never leave me.
When we first arrived at Auschwitz, thousands of bald heads covered the flat terrain as far as the eye could see, mushrooms wilting on a parched soil.
Judith, you are pretty poetic yourself.
I know that some of you think I'm just a dog, but I have feelings and I have a soul. I didn't think my German master Bruno was bad. He was part of the German army, not the SS. He was just your average young man, about 18 or 19, who probably didn't want to be stuck in that awful, backward French town with all those material-grubbing people. All they cared about was their belongings, their things, what they owned. I loved Bruno, and I loved that I was his troop's mascot. He treated me well. He fed me everything he ate, including sausages and Wiener Schnitzel. He was very sentimental and sweet. You remind me of him, Eddie. He was sweet, just like you. When Bruno found out that I'd been killed for no reason by that smelly Frenchman, he told Lucille, "Why did he have to shoot our buggy, our mascot, our poor dog?" Afterward, Bruno cried in his room every night for a week. I know. I was there with him. No one hears of these German soldiers. I once overheard Bruno telling someone, "My parents used to have a villa on the Rhine. Your soldiers, meaning the French, occupied it during the last war. They smashed rare, priceless musical instruments that had once been in the family for over 200 years, and they tore up books that once belonged to Goethe. Those townspeople, they were horrible. A group of young French boys killed a priest who was trying to help them get home. They pushed him into the water, and they continued to throw stones at the priest while he was in the lake. He was bombarded by stones. He got trapped in the mud, and that was how he died. In the water up to his waist, head thrown back, one eye gouged out by a stone. Irene wrote all of this in sweet Française.
Yes, I wrote this novel, but it's based on real people in a real town. In the end, it didn't matter that I portrayed Even when my husband wrote on my behalf, despite of being Jewish descent, I have no sympathy whatsoever. All of her books prove this, either for Judaism or for the Bolshevik regime.
This is what I speak of in the problem with empathy.
Can you smell that? It smells like those lovely flowers at the train station.
Is it a sweet smell, Bucky?
It is sweet, like perfumed candles.
It must have smelled this way during the Black Plague. I read somewhere that so many bodies were rotting because nobody wanted to bury them. The sweet smell of candles was everywhere.
Ah, the Middle Ages. If one looks closely back at the 1940s, they bear a striking resemblance to the Middle Ages.
For the Jews, it certainly does.
It's said that during the Middle Ages, it was the one time in the history of man when everyone watched a loved one die.
It sort of felt that way during the war.
That's why so many Jews were living in Poland during the onset of the war. They were thrown out of Spain and most of Europe during the Black Plague. People believed that the Jews were poisoning their wells.
How ridiculous.
Yes, but Pope Clement VI supported the Jews. He said that the Jews didn't poison the wells.
Well, that's one time in history that a pope stood up for the Jews.
That's such a generalization, Mechama. He even sent the troops to fight the flatulent craze.
Right. And what country do you think that movement started in?
Germany was not the only country involved in the flatulent craze. Switzerland and France also took part.
Oh, right. That was before the Swiss decided upon neutrality.
I can't tell you how many times I saw Red Cross trucks in Auschwitz. They sat and watched as the walking dead fell to the ground. Children reaching their hands through the barbed wire fences. No, not hands. Tiny, elongated bones with translucent skin on them.
Oh, the thought of it, horrible.
I will never understand this. To have food and clothing in their trucks, their ambulances, yet to remain immobile, neutral, whatever one wants to call it, it's unconscionable. I helped, but I still question my involvement in the Jewish Council. You did, Rob.
You were blessed, Eddie. A real angel.
But I did send the old and sick to their deaths.
You did not, Eddie. The Nazis did.
Anna's right, Eddie. You were there to help. You even said that you were more like a social worker.
But I made them think that things wouldn't be so bad. I just didn't want to frighten them.
You were right in what you did, Etty. They would see and feel enough horror on the trains taking them eastward. It must have been a relief to have your face as their last image to remember.
I love you, Eddie. Please don't doubt yourself.
Oh, Bubby, I love you too. I wish you'd been my pet. You're so sweet.
Please, stop you two.
Why, Irene? Why do they have to stop?
Yes, why, Irene?
Love is very important. I see love as a kind of enduring and conflictless will.
What? You write about love, too?
Well, no, but how can one write about humanity and not touch on love?
You're so right.
I agree.
Love follows the pattern of integers. Love is unending, and it always seems to be defined as the sum of one's two predecessors.
Do you mean like the Fibonacci sequence?
Yes.
That's very interesting. I'm certain that a mathematician has never viewed the sequence in terms of love.
But a poet would.
Oh, and now you're an expert on poetry, Bubby?
No, I'm not. But poets need to know more than just writing and literature. They need to know about science and history and mythology.
And mathematics. I never thought about it that way, Bubby.
life and death.
The way the Nazis were.
They were monsters, not indifferent.
It's a form of indifference to life and death, which leads to ghettoization and massacre, taking away one's state and making them superfluous, stripping a people of their plurality. That's the crime against humanity, not the millions that died.
How can you say that?
Yes, Hannah, please explain.
I want to hear this. Explain, please.
I want to hear this as well, because by the time these people became sheep to be slaughtered, or superfluous as you call it, they weren't human anymore. They weren't able to respond to their situation in human terms.
I know what you mean, Hannah. I get it. It was like us pets without a home. We were superfluous.
Oh, right. The dog understands.
Well, I do.
Now, you two, let me see if I can explain it properly. And you are right, Lee. They were no longer human anymore. That was the Nazis' purpose. Nazism kills the roots of political, social, and personal life. Totalitarianism is a form of government without political opposition or traditional forms of community to check it.
Okay, all right. If I understand you then, what you're saying is that Nazism eliminated a place, a home for the Jews.
That's how I'm seeing it.
Or, if we take it one step further, they never had the legal status or rights as citizens in the first place.
Yes, it assaults the right to belong to a community. The Nazis reduced the Jews to a mass. Nazi ideology played on history. Mankind has murdered Jews for 2,000 years. So, Jew killing is normal.
Not just the Jews.
Of course not. They reduced anyone to a mass who was viewed as a threat to their regime. Homosexuals, the wrong people, political dissenters, communists, socialists, the Slavic people, and the blacks were next. I'm not saying that the crimes of the Nazis were not criminal. They were radical evil to the point of becoming incomprehensible.
But we still need to forgive them. I'm not sure how I feel. Forgiveness is not coming that easy for me.
I'm with you, Judith.
Forgiveness is a human faculty for undoing, no? A way at reversing the deeds and words of others. Forgiveness is an action, a type of relationship, an experience of the human condition of plurality. I understand that we can neither punish nor forgive radical evil deeds because they transcend the realm of human affairs. But forgiveness is more of a mutual release. The dead cannot find or get at the truth. They cannot judge or tell their stories, so others must do it for them, so that the community life can go on and not be forever tied to the past.
So, it appears that you're on the fence with this issue, Hannah.
For people like Eichmann, no. No members of the earth would want to share it with him. His death sentence was appropriate. Eichmann was a new type of criminal, acting for the state. He was thoughtlessness in the extreme. What I mean is that he never had an internal dialogue with himself. These modern, state-employed mass murderers must be prosecuted because they violated the order of mankind, and not because they killed millions of people.
You almost had me convinced there for a minute that you were on our side.
I agree with Irene. You had me for a moment, but now I'm lost.
I'm halfway there.
Me too. But forgiveness really helps the victim, not the perpetrator, right?
Absolutely.
This sounds very similar to a speech given by Dr. Martin Luther
not mean ignoring what has been done or putting a false label on an evil act. It means rather that the evil act no longer remains as a barrier to the relationship.
Quoted most elegantly, I might add.
This is why I decided to study mathematics after the war. No gray areas, only provable solutions.
These issues always come up in sociology.
But don't you see? This discussion is wonderful. This is action. We are engaging in politics. This is the public realm.
All this talk is making me hungry. I sure could go for a sausage right now.
I'm overwhelmed at the moment.
Don't you see? The onion structure
Sausages simmered in onions and garlic.
made the system organizationally shockproof against the factuality of the world.
And challah with sweet butter. Pierogies. Pierogies go great with sausages. Blintzes. Cheesy filled blintzes with hot blackberry syrup. Wiener schnitzel smothered in a spicy brown horseradish sauce.
Bobby, please stop. This is torture. You're making me so hungry.
It's like being in the camps again.
Yes, starving and having to listen to some fool going on and on about food, like this Bobby here.
Bubby is not a fool.
Bobby, would you tell us again about the lovely flowers at the train station?
Well, what Fritzy told me was that the flowers were planted weekly. So many different smells. I'm sure there were many different colors, but dogs don't see in color too well. We distinguish between the blacks and the whites much better. Some flowers were big, some were small, some looked vibrant and healthy, but others looked sick after being transplanted. I found out that other train stations started planting flowers too. The flowers made the new arrivals feel safer. At one camp, those exiting the cattle cars were greeted by an orchestra. The humans must have thought, how bad can this camp be, this work camp? Soon, all the dogs started talking about the huge amounts of bones behind the train stations, and piles of ashes. These ashes were used on the flower boxes.
Stay, hang around for a little bit, eat something, have some coffee.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Please remember United States National Holocaust Day this week. Take a moment to remember all the victims. Thank you.
Thank you.